Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I have a pleasure to welcoming you at our dissemination event. The objective of our today's meeting is to present environmental protection and climate change study results and also our interactive dashboard with the related data to this chapter. And environmental protection and climate change chapter is the seventh policy area covered by our benchmarking study 2022-2025. We are doing for and also in very close cooperation with the Ministry of Interior and Kingdom Relation of the Netherlands. However, before I present the study objectives, research area, time frame, and also our teams, I wanted to thank you, all of you, to join us today for our meeting and to find the time for that. So what exactly is our agenda? We will do the first introduction to that together with Frans van Dongen, and we will present the benchmarking study objectives, areas, countries covered, etc. And then we will go directly into the presentation of the performance in environmental protection and climate change in 35 countries. After this presentation, we will continue with the presentation of the related dashboard, and our APA team will show you exactly how our interactive tool works, where to find it, what kind of data we can find there, and also how to use it effectively. And at the end of our meeting today, I will present what's foreseen in the current 2025 year and also in 2026. So as I already mentioned in the beginning, we can realize our benchmarking study covering period 2022-25 thanks to the grant from the Ministry of Interior and Kingdom Relation of the Netherlands. And we are preparing this project and in a very close cooperation with the ministry. And I have a pleasure to work and present the project leader from the ministry side, Mr. Frans van Dongen. Thank you very much, Frans, to be here with us today. And I would like to give you the floor.
Thank you very much, Ivona. It is really great to work with you and the whole APA team on this international benchmark program on public performance. And I warmly welcome you all at this APA webinar for the study results regarding the public domain of environmental protection and climate change, including the presentation of the data dashboard for this domain. My name is Frans van Dongen, as Ivona explained earlier, and I'm a program manager of public performance at the Ministry of the Interior and Kingdom Relations in the Netherlands. And I've been also the ministry's representative in APA's Board of Governors during the last 10 years. The Dutch Ministry of the Interior has already a long tradition in international benchmarking on public performance going back to the 90s in the last century. We are very happy that we could establish a fruitful relationship with APA a couple of years ago to deepen this tradition with an extensive 4-year benchmark program for 35 countries. We strongly believe that policymakers can learn a lot from international comparisons of public performance in different kind of functional policy domains. And this is not about winners and score lists. It is about identifying mechanisms, policy systems, interventions, and contexts that are relevant to become more successful and get better public value, better outcomes, more efficiency, and more satisfied citizens and entrepreneurs. And a part of international learning from best practices, it is also valuable to learn from examples of underperformance or failure. It's helpful to learn why specific mechanisms or interventions don't work in specific contexts and to prevent that these failures will be repeated. Systematically learning from failure is of great value. It is like in science, working by trial and error. And further, it is of the greatest importance to bring these kind of study results to the attention of policymakers and stimulate them to use them for purpose of policy design. And therefore, we welcome very much this initiative of the EIPA benchmark team for this webinar to disseminate the study results for the policy domain environmental protection and climate change, and introduce the dashboard that gives you full, flexible, and user-friendly online access to the data of the study results. So I'm happy that we will get a demonstration of the online dashboard. And lastly, I would like to thank our research partners, Julian Barbalata and Emma Avoyan, for her outstanding achievements with this international benchmark study on environmental protection and climate change. And I hope you all will have an inspiring webinar, and give the floor back to Ivona Karwat. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Frans, for your very kind words in the introduction, and of course for our great cooperation. And if everybody agrees, I would propose to continue with the preparation of the EIPA team. And I would like to give the floor to Miranda. If you could please present yourself. After we will continue with Paolo and Bjorn.
Thank you. I'm Miranda Lovell-Prescott. I work at the European Institute of Public Administration, and today I'm here in my capacity as working on the data-related aspects for throughout the chapters, particularly with the dashboard, which we will present later. I'm very glad to see everyone today. Paolo.
Good afternoon. My name is Paolo Giovannetti. I'm a research officer here at EIPA, and I've been working on the benchmarking study since the beginning of my time here. And I've been involved firstly in the preparation of the public administration chapter, and then together with Miranda in all aspects related to the data and the publication of the study, as well as the dashboard, also with Bjorn, which we will present one of them very shortly. So thank you.
Thank you. My name is Bjorn Hölbling. I'm an active research officer and digitalization officer at EIPA, and I joined this great team in relation to the topic of data visualization, in particular this dashboard. So glad to see and present later on furthermore. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you very much. I think that it's my turn to present myself. My name is Ivona Karwat, and I'm a senior expert and project leader of this benchmarking study here in EIPA. And thanks to that, I have the pleasure to work very closely with Frans, our EIPA team, and with the best experts from some very prestigious universities and institutions. And as you already know, almost all of us, I propose to continue with the presentation of the objectives and with the objectives of the benchmarking study, and also countries we are covering and what exactly we are doing and what we were doing during all those years. And as we can see, we agreed, it was already in 2021, that we will do the analysis of the performance of public administration, which is exactly the main objective of our benchmarking study, in 35 countries. So our analysis is covering 27 EU member states, Iceland, Norway, Switzerland, United Kingdom, but also Australia, New Zealand, Canada, and United States of America. And we also agreed with the ministry that we will do very in-depth analysis of 10 policies areas you can see here on the slide. And I would have to say that our benchmarking study, it's already the 4th edition of this report. And the previous versions were, the previous reports were published in 2020, 2004, 2012, and the 3rd was published in 2015 and prepared by Dutch Research Institute, SCP. And our role and what was agreed with the ministry is that we will do the update of the SCP report, benchmarking study, and we also will broaden its perspective. So we will do the analysis of all 10 policy areas in depth and separately. And apart from that, we also will evaluate the effectiveness, efficiency, cost effectiveness, and what is new, satisfaction and trust of citizens, enterprises, and other relevant stakeholders in their administration. And as already mentioned, we started our work in 2021, and during this year we were scoping the entire project. We also were, and we agreed with the ministry what exactly will be done and how it should be done, and we were preparing as well the report and the research of the already existing secondary sources of the literature and the data. And we prepared quite broad reports on that. And in 2000, and we also agreed with the ministry because that it's, I would say, very in-depth analysis of all 10 policy areas, that we will divide the benchmarking study 2022-25 into sub-studies. So in 2022, we covered 4 policy areas: public administration, education, housing, and social safety. In 2023, economy, infrastructure, and science, technology, and innovation, social security, employment, income, and wealth, and also environmental protection and climate change. The results of the analysis we are preparing and we prepared and we are presenting today. Last year in 2024, we did the analysis of the health, sport, and social security system. And we also, at the end of the year, decided that the culture will be done as a separate chapter in 2025. So we can see how exactly it changed. The planning changed a bit in 2024, and we also said that social security system will be presented as a international best practices in social security system. And how actually our work looks like. We normally start always our work with a kickoff meeting where the ministry, all partners involved, and also our EIPA team, we are presenting, and we agree on the visualization, content, and also we, apart from the kickoff meeting, we have meetings between ministry and partners and EIPA team, ministry and EIPA team and partners during the entire process of the preparation of the study. And as already mentioned, we are doing quantitative and qualitative analysis in our benchmarking study using already existing sources of information. We said that our data analysis cover the period 2007-2020. However, we are introducing the most recent data whenever it's possible, and we are using the secondary research of in each, I would say, policy area we are covering. And I have to say that the one of the most important elements of our benchmarking study, what already also Franz mentioned, is Power BI. And it's an interactive dynamic data navigation tool launched today for the environmental protection and climate change. And this interactive tool is providing insight of the most important data at the glance. And all dashboards prepared for each policy areas covered by the study are publicly available at our EIPA website. And in a second, I will exactly show you where to find all the information. So here, when you enter the EIPA website, there is the button on the top on the left side called Public Sector Benchmarking. And there we find all the information because our sub-study 2022, 2023, and 24 are already public and published there on our website, and there are also all the information about dissemination activities and the dashboard. So you can actually enter there and practice the dashboard. So I would like to say that I have a pleasure to present our speakers, because that it was a very short introduction to our benchmarking study 2022-25, and I propose that we continue with the presentation of the environmental protection and climate change chapter fundings. And I have a pleasure to present our speakers, Ms. Emma Avoyan and Mr. Julian Barbalata, and they are assistant professor of special planning at Radboud University. And before we start the presentation, I would like to express my gratitude for both of you to be with us today. And please, let's start the presentation of the chapter, and I would like to give you the floor. And thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you, Ivana. Thank you so much for nice words. And although I cannot see the participants, but welcome everyone. Welcome to this webinar. So I had with my colleague Julian Barbalata a great pleasure in working on this chapter of environmental protection and climate change, and work with the team of EIPA and France, of course. And today we will try to sketch the main results, although The report is a lot more comprehensive, and I believe it's publicly available so that you can take a look if you are interested. And also this presentation will help you to better navigate the dashboard. So I'm gonna now try to share my screen. Is everything all right? You see the presentation?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, great. So the objective of the chapter was to update and deepen the analysis of the area of environmental protection and climate change covered in the previous report, in the previous edition, but we have added new thematic areas. And at the end, we have looked into air quality, water resources, waste management, energy, biodiversity and landscapes, as well as citizens' perception and climate change and environmental policy. And we, of course, did the benchmarking. So we compared the performance of 35 countries in these areas. And the main data collection methods, of course, Ivona just briefly mentioned, we have done qualitative analysis. So we have conducted an extensive document analysis as well as scientific literature review to provide this contextual depth to the report. And as well, we have, of course, used existing data sets. So we did the quantitative analysis and used descriptive statistics. And all these data sets, that's what will be available for you with the dashboard. So these are the main two ways how we have conducted our analysis. And we had the logic of doing inputs, outputs, outcomes analysis. For the inputs, we have looked into the government's expenditure on environmental protection across 34 countries. We excluded United States just because there was no available data. So this expenditure measured as the share of total GDP spent on environmental protection, and government spending, according to this metric, is categorized into 6 areas: waste management, wastewater management, pollution abatement, protection of biodiversity in landscape, R&D in environmental protection, and more general umbrella category of environmental protection expenditures, other environmental protection expenditures. And according to the very latest data, which was from 2021, at the time when we did the analysis in 2023, I believe now there is more recent data, the total expenditure on environmental protection of all European countries, so the entire European Union, was quite modest, around 0.8% of total GDP. And breaking down into the categories, we could see that the waste management, most of this 0.8% was spent, so 0.4%, followed by wastewater management. And looking at the country level, we could see that Croatia had the highest expenditure, 1.5% of GDP, followed by the Netherlands, which was 1.4%, and mainly used on waste management and wastewater management. Then it was followed by Belgium and Malta. And looking at the other end, so the lowest expenditure, the lowest amount of money spent on environmental protection and climate change was for Finland and Ireland, 0.2% and 0.3% respectively. But overall, looking at the trend, it was clear that from 1995 to 2021, EU spending on environmental protection remained quite stable, somewhere between 0.7% and 0.9%. And also the data highlighted the variation in national priorities when it comes to environmental spending, showing that while some countries allocate a substantial share of their GDP to environmental protection, others lag behind. We looked at also stringency index. So in simple words, this index measures how strict are the environmental policies in the countries. And it's developed by OECD, and it's an internationally comparable index. So by looking at the countries and putting in a general perspective, we could see that policy stringency overall has increased substantially between 2000 and 2020. You can see in the graph, so that the word is out of my head, the columns, the rows, the green and the blue, the differences. So the most stringent, so the most strict environmental policies according to the data of 2020 were in France, Switzerland, Luxembourg, and Finland. The Netherlands actually doubled its score, which of course reflects the significant policy shift compared to 2000. However, not all countries progressed at the same pace, and some countries such as Hungary, they had large relative increase, but still compared to the other countries, they have low policy stringency level compared to other European countries. So moving from inputs, we zoom on specific areas related to environmental protection. First, we looked at air quality metrics and compared with the countries. So for the air quality, first we looked at the most dangerous, because it is causing, according to scientific studies, it poses the most significant health risks. This pollutant called PM2.5. If you have a fancy home air filter, probably you know this pollutant very well, because if you burn something in the house, it will become immediately 100 or so. So according to the data, again, most recent data that we could see was from 2019. Emissions of this PM2.5 have decreased in the reporting countries. So, and this is due to optimized combustion processes, decline of coal in the energy sector, of course, lower emissions from transport and agriculture. And this decrease was observed in all European countries, as well as non-European countries that we looked at. So UK, Norway, Iceland, Switzerland, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, and United States. However, in some European countries, such as Poland, and you can see from the graph, and further later with the dashboard data, that Poland continued to be above the exposure concentration obligation, which is in 2015 is 20 microgram. So yeah. So there are obviously a number of reasons for that, and that can be related to a transport industry, but also energy industry. And overall, so the primary source is the energy consumption from residential sector, followed by manufacturing and extractive industry, as well as road transport sector. Further, for the air quality, we looked also at greenhouse gas emissions. This was very interesting to look, because this was something related to also COVID-19 that we could clearly see. First of all, European Union has formulated very ambitious target to achieve 55% emission reduction by 2030 and reach climate neutrality by 2050. And these targets both are included in the European climate law. So this presents a considerable challenge for the countries, and that's why we all aim for energy transition, of course, towards renewable energy. The emission decline also, as you can see from the graph, it declined considerably if you compare it to the data from 1990 compared to 2021. And it was interesting to see that the emissions declined by 10% compared to 2019, marking the sharpest drop since 1990. And this was largely related to COVID-19 pandemic. Of course, in 2021, the levels almost reached pre-pandemic times. But overall, the downward trend is clear from the data. So the emissions are going down. At looking country level, Czech Republic, Germany, Ireland, Luxembourg, they still have quite high emissions per capita, while Sweden, with recent data of 2021, has the lowest emission, and that's due to their dedication to clean energy. So clean energy sources, hydro, wind, or nuclear power. Moving on to other themes that we looked at related to water resources. First, we tried to identify the availability of water resources in countries. So how much water is there before trying to see what is causing water stress. So this is a metric called renewable water resources. It's counting both internal and external, not going into very much detail. So it's about the average annual flow of rivers and as well as the water that comes from the rain, for example, from precipitation, and those water resources that are not generated in the country, so coming from the inflow and upstream from upstream countries. And actually, this slide I have been showing to my students as well this year. And for some of the students, it was quite surprising. The Netherlands actually has the highest dependency on transboundary water resources, so the waters that are coming from other countries. So therefore, keeping those rivers clean is and contributing to the efforts of the European Union to reduce the pollution from the rivers, of course, is key for the Netherlands as well. Looking at the countries that have the smallest external inflow, those are Malta, Cyprus, Spain, Denmark, and Iceland. And we also could see from the data that some of the countries, they still have quite a lot of pressure in terms of their water resources availability. And this is called water stress, and that is considered 1,700 millimeter per inhabitant. This is kind of measure that says, okay, the country is in the water stress according to the data from 2000, Cyprus, Czech Republic, Poland, Romania, and Malta, they had water stress. Actually, that is still an issue for Cyprus and Malta. And another fact that Iceland actually has the highest water resources availability. So then we try to see also what is causing one of the main reasons of water stress or reduced water availability is the water abstraction. And we compare the water abstraction in the countries. And there are considerable differences, as you can see from the table, in the amount of water abstracted within EU countries, in part reflecting the size of the countries and resources available. I think I have not a lot of time, so I'm going to move to move on to the protected areas. So the next theme that we looked was the biodiversity and landscapes. This is the positive part of the report because in terms of the clear trend of the increasing amount of protected areas, both terrestrial and marine. But first about the terrestrial protected areas, it is measured as the percentage of total land area for terrestrial protected areas. And overall, by the end of 2021, looking at the entire EU, 26% of all EU land is protected, the terrestrial land, with 18.6% designated to Natura 2000 sites and 7.7% to other national designations. So when the countries protect under national law their land. And the EU biodiversity strategy for 2030 sets out a target of protecting at least 30% of EU land by 2030, while also ensuring that all protected areas are effectively managed. The highest share, as you can see from the graph, of protected areas are reported in Luxembourg. So the 55%, of course, it relates to the countryside as well. But more than half of the Luxembourg area is protected. Then Bulgaria 40% and Slovenia another 40%. In contrast, the lowest share of protected areas from EU are in Finland, Ireland, and Sweden. And from among non-EU countries, Canada and United States, they report only 12.7 and 13% respectively. But just for a second, imagine the vastness of these countries, and that in a way makes sense. Figures also show that all the reporting countries have increased the share of terrestrial protected areas compared to 2000, like I already mentioned. And it is important to also mention that, some countries compared, if you compare the share of the protected areas related to the population density, such as the Netherlands or Switzerland, they have the highest share, which also, of course, suggests that there are a lot of restrictions related to human activities, for example, infrastructure development or housing. Related to marine protected areas, this is also the share has been increasing, as you can see from the graph, and there are different metrics that you can look at the share of the marine protected areas. For example, Natura 2000, 8% of EU marine all waters are protected under Natura 2000. The largest shares in Germany, Belgium, and France. And there is also another metric is developed by OECD that is called Marine Exclusive Economic Zones. And under this metric, also Germany and the Netherlands have the highest share of marine protected areas by 2020. So sorry for being a little bit long. So this was what I wanted to share with you, but now I give the floor to my colleague, Julian, who will move on to the other teams, the remaining teams of the report. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Emma. I'll try to share my screen now. This works.
Yes, perfect.
Yeah, thank you. Moving to the waste management domain, we see that with the intensifying urbanization trends, with population growth, economic development, there is a tendency to basically exacerbate waste generation, and to also place an increasing pressure on waste management operations. According to Eurostat, data on the generation of waste includes both hazardous and non-hazardous wastes from all economic sectors, households, and waste treatment, but it excludes most mineral waste, and this basically improves the comparability across countries included in our study. For the waste management operations, in terms of the more general trends, we see a mixed picture between countries. For instance, on average, 4.8 tons per capita of total waste were generated in the EU in 2020, down from 5.2 tons per capita in 2010. Here, the total waste generated per capita increased in 16 EU countries and decreased in the other EU countries. The amounts ranged from less than 1.5 tons per capita in the case of Portugal to 21 tons per capita in the case of Finland in 2020. And this is for the EU member states. And basically, the amount of waste per capita basically went from 2.6 tons per capita in Norway and to 4.3 tons per capita in the United Kingdom for the non-EU countries. When aligning this, the inputs that Emma presented at the beginning of our presentation today, the best performing countries in terms of either reducing or maintaining low levels of total waste generated per capita include Croatia, Cyprus, Denmark, Greece, Hungary, Ireland, Italy, Lithuania, Slovakia, and Spain. Another important indicator included in our study looks at the landfill rates, which basically represent a percentage of the municipal waste that is treated and is landfilled. In the interval 2010-2020, we see that nearly all countries reduced their reliance on landfills, with the most significant reductions achieved by Estonia, Slovenia, and Finland. However, some other EU and non-EU countries made minimal progress and recorded landfill rates of 50% or higher. In Europe, we have the EU Landfill Directive, which basically stipulates that member states should decrease the volume of municipal waste sent to landfills to 10% or less by 2035. And we see, for instance, that in the interval 2010-2020, the landfilling of household and related waste declined by 57% in Europe, amounting to roughly 41 million tons. Combustion waste was reduced by 30%, roughly 15 million tons, and other waste by 28%, which basically represents around 9 million tons. In 2020, 9 member states and 2 non-EU countries reached this level. And when again looking at the inputs, we basically see that several countries managed to either maintain low landfilling rates or basically improve their performance to reduce municipal waste throughout the interval. And these countries included Lithuania, Estonia, Slovenia, Finland, Ireland, Italy, and Luxembourg. Compared to their expenditure, Luxembourg, Lithuania, and Estonia registered the lowest government expenditure on waste management compared to the EU average, which stands at 0.4% of the GDP. Finally, when looking at waste recycling, which basically represents the percentage of municipal waste that is recycled, composted, used in anaerobic digestion, and prepared for use, most of the analyzed countries managed to increase their municipal waste recycling rates since 2010. And we see a clear indication of an enhancement, a trend in bettering waste management. However, there are also discrepancies in municipal waste recycling performance between countries, with the highest and lowest recycling rates being rather substantial. For instance, in 2020, the recycling rates varied from 70% in Germany to only 11% in Malta for the EU member states. And from the non-EU countries, Australia recorded the highest recycling rate, around 40%, while Canada and New Zealand stood at 28% in 2018. 8 European countries managed to achieve recycling rates of 50% or higher, while another 7 countries recycled less than 20% of municipal waste. When basically taking into account all the figures for government expenditure on waste management, the best performing countries with the lowest expenditure across all waste management operations include Austria, Germany, Lithuania, and Switzerland. Here, a word of caution is in order, because waste generation basically tends to follow economic growth trends closely. Substantial additional effort is required to achieve decoupling and ultimately realize a circular economy. Now, I would like to move briefly also to the energy domain, where we see, for instance, that European countries have a long-standing dependence on energy imports, with statistics showing that in 2020, nearly 60% of the energy consumed in the European Union was sourced from abroad. In 2021, the EU's import dependency rate stood at 56%, basically indicating that more than half of the energy needs in Europe were covered through net imports. The EU relies on important energy from third countries to meet its own consumption needs. In 2021, petroleum products, including crude oil as the primary component, constituted the largest portion of energy imports into the EU, accounting for nearly 2/3, with 64% of total energy imports. These were followed by natural gas with a share of 25%, while solid fossil fuels accounted for 6% of the imports. when considering, for instance, the energy production indicator, we see that the EU utilizes a diverse range of energy sources for its production. These sources include solid fuels, natural gas, crude oil, nuclear energy, and renewable energy, which basically includes hydro, wind, and solar. And in 2021, renewable energy remarkably accounted for the largest share of 41% of the total energy production in the EU. We then had nuclear energy, which played a notably significant role in France, Belgium, and Slovakia. Solid fuels that constituted primary resource source in Poland, Estonia, and the Czech Republic, and natural gas that held the largest share in Norway and Ireland. Here also crude oil, for instance, dominated in Denmark and the United Kingdom with 35 and 42% shares respectively. To conclude, for the energy domain, so in our study there are multiple indicators looking into the energy performance. We only selected a few for our presentation today. For the energy domain, I'll still briefly say a few words about the share of renewable sources. And this basically represents the amount of renewable energy that is consumed for electricity, heating and cooling, and transport in each country. In 2021, the share of renewable energy in the overall energy consumption in the EU slightly decreased to 21.8% compared to 2020. This was the first recorded decline, actually, which is explained by multiple sources, basically in view of the easing of restrictions that were related to the COVID-19 pandemic. The current target set by the EU is to achieve a renewable energy share of 32% by 2030. Among the EU countries, Sweden stood out with the highest proportion of renewables in energy consumption, reaching 62.6% in 2021, followed by Finland with roughly 43% and Latvia with 42%. Of the non-EU countries, Iceland and Norway have really outstanding shares of renewables reported, with 86% and 74% of their renewable in energy consumption. New Zealand covered roughly 1/3 of energy consumption from renewables, followed by Switzerland, Canada, the United Kingdom, and finally Australia and the United States with only 8%. Here, it is also important to note that the share of renewables in energy consumption is influenced by a combination of factors, which includes policy frameworks, technological advancements, but as well as natural endowments. To conclude our presentation, I'll move to the last section of our study and report, looking into the citizens' perceptions of climate change and environmental policy. Here we drew on three main sources to basically analyze data, looking at the European Investment Bank Climate Survey of 2022, the Special Eurobarometer on Climate Change published in 2021, and the OECD report Building Trust to Reinforce Democracy, also published in 2021. By analyzing the data of these three large surveys, we noticed that in every country included in this study, climate change and the deterioration of nature are perceived as key challenges of this century. The sentiment is widespread among Europeans with around 80%, followed by the British with 74% and Americans 59%. In the EU, United Kingdom, and United States, there's a notable trend whereby the younger generation displays a higher awareness of the climate crisis, as well as a higher disposition to basically take action towards climate change. When looking at the broader social demographics, there is also a telling trend in citizens' standpoints on climate change and their perceptions. For instance, the respondents who consider climate change to be the biggest challenge of this century for humanity are also more inclined to endorse measures to mitigate its effects. However, we also noticed, and this is reported in the studies mentioned earlier, we are dealing with an intergenerational divide in perceptions of climate change, which basically suggests the need to have more sustained investment in education and communication strategies to engage all age groups and to basically highlight the potential societal and economic benefits towards broader support for climate actions. Finally, we see there is a significant share of EU and British citizens that believe they are more concerned about climate crisis than their respective governments. Here, the public remains skeptical about the government's capacity to effectively tackle climate change, a finding that is highlighted also by the OECD report, which basically indicates that approximately half of the respondents from OECD countries think that their governments should make climate change a priority. A lack of trust in the ability of public institutions to implement effective policies for long-term benefits is also evident. The majority of EU and British respondents share the view that their countries will ultimately fail to reduce carbon emissions as to the levels as pledged in the Paris Agreement. In the OECD Trust Survey, we also see that the analysis reveals that people's confidence in a country's ability to reduce greenhouse gas emissions has a positive correlation with trust in the national government and less so with the local government and civil service. Here, it's important to take into account that investing in public governance toward effective climate change and environmental protection policies could further stimulate trust in the government. While climate change intensifies and the long-term benefits of climate action may seem rather distant, here it is important, and I use this as a closing note, for governments to enhance communication with the public regarding the merits of collective efforts to tackle these challenges. I'm basically concluding with our presentation here, and I would like to thank you for your attention and apologize for the slightly longer time we took to go through the specifics of our study.
Thank you very much, Emma and Julian, for this very interesting presentation. And I propose that we go directly into the dashboard and related to the chapter data.
Thank you, Ivana, and thank you for such a comprehensive description of the chapter, which indeed helps with understanding the dashboard that Paolo, Bjorn, and I have been working on over the last few weeks. So I'm just going to start by walking you through a typical journey with our dashboard so that you can yourselves dynamically interact with the data and have a better picture of how the countries in question are examined. So as Ivana mentioned earlier, on our website, there's a dedicated page for the benchmarking study, which if you go to, you can find all of the previous sub-studies and all you need to know about the chapter. We also have a few events coming up which are on other policy domains, and therefore you are welcome to sign up here and look out for any new information. We've done 7 different dashboards, all of which you can access here at the top of the screen. I'm just quickly going to randomly show you one of them just because after this event, you will be able to watch our presentation today, and anything you found interesting by Emma or Julian, you can re-watch later on. So I'm going to go to our current dashboard that we're talking about, which is on environment and climate. And I hand the floor to Paolo to go through the dashboard itself. So we have we generally have two different journeys throughout the data. Firstly, looking at the framework that we use throughout our dashboard on inputs and then the outputs and outcomes, in this case, going through the various elements: air, water, waste management, energy, and biodiversity, which were described very well before, as well as our additional emphasis on citizens' trust. And then, so that's one journey, going through the data in a sort of led journey. But there's also another version of the dashboard where you can explore the data in a much more dynamic way, and we will present both. So firstly, I hand over to Paulo.
Yes, thank you very much. We can start, and I will guide you through this more, say, guided way of looking at the data. And we can start maybe with output and outcome indicators. And if we click on this button, we're redirected to this page, which let's say contains all of the, well, firstly a description of what we mean by and what is meant in the chapter by output and outcome indicators. And then we have the 5 different themes that are described in the chapter. And so we can maybe look at that of air, and if we click, we're then redirected to this page containing 3 different indicators related to air. And we can look at, let's say, the default country here is Australia, but we can, of course, look at also different countries, but only one at a time. So we can maybe then go into the Netherlands, and as you can see, the data changed according to our selection, and we can see the different how things in terms of exposure to different types of greenhouse gases. Well, firstly, starting from PM 2.5, so we can see that it's decreased from 2000 to 2019 in the Netherlands, but you can also see, which is displayed in this bright blue color. But you can see also in dark blue the average for the overall sample of countries, and in orange you can see the regional average. So in this case, Western Europe. So as you can see, there has been a decrease in pollution for what concerns PM 2.5 particles, and similarly, the same can be argued between 1990 to 2020 for more generally greenhouse gas emissions, which, yes, went down quite considerably, both in the Netherlands and in the sample of countries and in the region of Western Europe. And finally, we can look at the subdivision of greenhouse gas emissions in the Netherlands in 2021. So as we can see, it's divided into the different type of sources of emissions, such as energy or emissions from transport, manufacturing, residential, and yes, also in energy industries. And of course, this is a pie chart, and it will add up to 100%. With that, we can move into maybe another section, that of trust and satisfaction related to environmental protection and climate change. again, here we have a description of what it's meant, more specifically about citizens' perceptions of climate change in relation to climate change and environmental policy. And here we have a list of the indicators we have for displayed in our dashboard. And if we click, then we will be redirected to the page showing these 4 different indicators. And actually it's 3 indicators plus 1 correlation between indicators, and we can see again Austria, but we can change to again the Netherlands, and we can see a bit the percentage. We can see that the majority claimed to have of citizens claims to have taken action to fight climate change. And then we can see that the confidence in one's country's success in reducing greenhouse gas emissions is relatively low, but that's pretty much common in all countries. But on the other hand, we can see that the higher percentage think that the government should prioritize the reduction of the country's contribution to climate change. And finally, we can see a bit the correlation visually displayed between the confidence in one country's success in reducing greenhouse gas emissions and trusting in government. So, which is an indicator not displayed here singularly, but still, which is very important. And we can see that in general, there is a positive correlation, or at least association between these 2 indicators, suggesting that in countries with higher trust in government, generally citizens are also more confident that their country would be able to reduce substantially greenhouse gas emissions, which makes sense, and it's plausible. With that, we can go back to the homepage, and I will hand over to Bjorn, who will present a bit our page, which allows to look at the data in a more, let's say, autonomous way. So Bjorn, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Paolo. And as soon as one clicks on that button, I'll do the jump back here as well. And so we're back at the main page, and this time we also thought the way that the report is presenting data is nice. It is a very valuable insight. But if you are inclined to look at specific countries or specific regions to get some first inclinations for, okay, where do I want to dig in deeper? We use the data that was used in that. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have done that. We used the data underlying the report, not only to present it in a way that it is presented in the paper itself, but also if you click here, you can jump in. And I know that page is a bit busy, but we wanted to give you, as the user, a lot of freedom to manipulate or to look at the available data in different angles. Up here, you have the categories for the measurements that were also used in the report. So currently, when it starts with the input ones, and then you can directly select which one you're interested in. So, for example, in the policy stringency index was mentioned already, and as you see, I'm interested in the year 2020. It gives me a value on the countries that I selected. Let's briefly bring back all the countries. So this initial page is given so that you have an overview on the involved data points. Up here you have a slight graphical representation so that you have a bit of an idea where how the numbers relate to for the selected countries. And below you have the actual numbers of the indicator that is currently selected. It will automatically show you what sort of measurements these indicators are working with. And if you want to jump back to, it will also display you the definition of the chosen indicator, so that you're really sure what you're looking at. It will also display where it is coming from. And you have here to the right then the selection, do I want to focus on certain regions? That makes more sense. And or do I really only want to select, I don't know, 2 countries to have a look into? But especially on the view slide, it makes more sense to have a bit more countries. And it will also then dynamically display the country with the highest and the lowest values. Just here to remember, we have here that color representation with the degrees of blue. We chose that exactly to showcase we didn't make any value judgments or anything. It's just of that indicator in that category. That's the highest value, that's the lowest value. What that actually means, if that is like if it's positive to have a high value, yes, you would have to also double check, okay, what's indicator I'm actually looking at. And let's quick Europe as well, so that we have a bit more. And so this was the overview slide to further dig in. If you want to select, okay, this is not a good indicator, we'll pick later one with more years, but it will also display then any developments between it. These graphs are also zoomable, so if one country is really dominating it, you can zoom that one out for the moment so that you can get the insights. And if you're more graphically inclined, as I'm, for example, it always helps me a bit to have it directly displayed on the country map. As you've seen, for the moment, I selected the European countries, but as soon as you select back, it will react, and you have all of them. Here they are relatively close, but we can also, if I just jump back to one of the output factors, and let's for example, the recycling rates. Here the available data is more focused on the European Union, so it will also automatically zoom in from where it can get data, so that, oh, actually here it is, if I include all of the years, we have from all involved countries. One has to always take into account, it will take automatically the averages on this geographical one. So as it is also displaying when you hover about it, it's the average value, which is, if you included a couple of years, it's less helpful on that graph. So always be careful what you're actually looking at. But in another graph, like this time frame selection, here the years are split up, and then with let's say we have here here we actually want to only focus on Austria, Belgium, and Bulgaria. Here you see distribution is relatively close. And here all. You see a number of countries where there's actually quite a development between within this decade around these numbers, and you can always manipulate or we try to give as much as possibility to manipulate or the angle that you look at the data itself. Okay, that's from my point from that page, but if there are any questions coming up, please feel free to put them in the chat. So thank you for giving me the floor.
Thank you. Thank you very much for this presentation of the dashboard. I just wanted to say that the dashboard is fully operational at our website, so you can go there and have a look. And very quickly, as promised, I wanted to also show and say a few words about our current work and what will happen in 2026. So right now we already started to work in the update of all policy areas and on the culture as a separated chapter, and the update will be published after final conference foreseen in February 2026, as it is a case of each sub-study we are doing. And of course, environmental protection and climate change chapter takes part of the update. So we all have pleasure to work again with Emma, Julian, and Franz as an EIPA team. And also what we are planning is that apart from environmental protection, climate change chapter related dashboard, this year we also will deliver what Miranda actually already said, 2 additional dissemination activities like the one we have today in order to present a dashboard of health and sport chapter, and registration are already open. So here is the way, and it's the place where we can find all related information to our benchmarking study dashboard, and also as it was said in the beginning, already recorded dissemination activities. So from my side, I would like to thank all of you very much to be with us today, and I would like to thank you very much, Emma and Julian, also for this very great presentation, also to Franz to be with us, and to EIPA team. And I would like to thank you to be present and stay with us till the end of the dissemination activity. And I hope to see you in May when we'll present the dashboard for the health chapter. So thank you very much to all of you, and see you soon.